You're listening to Montreal Now with Aaron Rand and Natasha Hall on CJAD 800.
That is James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. And Jim, let's call it the blockbuster poll news. It literally came out maybe an hour or two ago, and this is more good news for the PQ and really bad news for the CAQ.
Absolutely, and it's kind of funny because I was listening to you a little earlier, and for a while there, I was almost tearing my hair out because I knew you guys were rerunning the Kader interview that David Hotel did this morning. I love David, and I think he's great on the 9 to noon slot, but I'm saying if we should be listening to, and I know we will later in the show, if we should be listening to anything right now, given these poll numbers, it's your podcast with Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the PQ leader. I mean, we were so impressed because you can find it at MontrealGazette.com. We were so impressed, we cracked off a separate story asking Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, well, what is it? What do you attribute this turnaround to, the success? And perhaps that is a part of the success. He just gave a very straight, honest answer, which I will, how can I put it? I will paraphrase very, very tightly. And he's basically saying, I don't act like a jerk. I listen to people and I don't act like a jerk. And guess what? People notice that. There's a conversation going on in Quebec, guys. It's a conversation that we had all better pay attention to, one that you go into on the podcast, Aaron. But folks, and I'm sorry, Natasha, I have to echo what you said. Even listening to Denis Kader a second time, I was kind of like, I don't know. I mean, he's saying all the things that I think he thinks CJD listeners want to hear. Mm-hmm. But I'm not really sure how that's going to play past the river. And let's face it, there's crazy things going on, guys. When you look at the breakdown of this survey, you look at Montreal, the Montreal area, which is the island and the 450, and this is supposed to be where the Liberals are supposed to be strongest. They're trailing the PQ in that area by 8 points, which basically sort of confirms their title as the Liberal part of the West Island of Montreal. The CAQ, and remember, the PQ has but one seat in the entire area. Right. That's Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon, and this is the kind of numbers that they're dredging up. And I got to tell you, it's kind of funny because we had discussed this whole idea that the Liberals had. No, don't worry, we'll just wait and see. We're not going to go scuttling after a leader. My hat's off to the brain trust of the Liberal Party. My hat's off to their strategists because they have managed to go from zero to oblivion without even hitting second gear. They are at 8% support with Francophone voters. So, you keep waiting, you guys, because the Parti Québécois keeps growing exponentially. And whereas that brand is very familiar in the minds of millions of Quebecers, the Liberals, with every passing year, are becoming more and more obscure and more remote. So, I think the next interesting question, whether it's Léger or whether it's the Palace survey, which we were talking about today, may be, would you be more likely to vote for the Liberals if Denis Kader was in charge? I think the answers would be very, very interesting. But make no mistake, whether we like it or not, I think some of us are rolling our eyes at this realization. The PQ is back. Will they be back will they stay back over the course of the next 2 years? All things being equal right now, I would say yes, because unless, my God, there's some big changes in the CAQ, and by big changes, I mean at the top, you may see even more visible deterioration of the Coalition Avenir Québec between now and the 2026 election. Same thing with Québec Solidaire, which is in the same rut, basically, maybe 3 points ahead of the Liberals, but in the same rut, having these ideological, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin discussions. Meanwhile, people are just walking by. There's too much going on. There's too much that has to be dealt with to sort of deal with these kind of internal musings. And watch out for the Quebec Conservatives, even though they have nobody in the National Assembly. They are polling at 12%. I think right now, Eric James is putting on his hip gaiters and getting his fly fisher, and he's going to try and get himself a couple of CAQ MNAs to defect between now and the end of the week.
I have a couple of questions. Number one, to what you just said about Quebec Solidaire, and it's funny because we talk so little about them right now, so little about Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois as well, to be frank. Are they a spent force here? If the PQ is doing this well, and we talk about them and the CAQ, and then, of course, we just talk about the Liberals basically being a disaster, but no one is talking about Quebec Solidaire.
Not at all.
And that's the problem. Good or bad, they're off the radar. And you can't afford to do this in this day and age. I'm sorry to say it, and I'm sorry to say that in this day and age, engaging in deep thinking about policy and saying, well, we should make sure that in the next by-elections, the candidates are female, and let's have an argument about that with our delegates and this and that, and people are zoning out. This has got nothing to do with them, okay? And now, and as I say, and as your podcast points out, Aaron, here is Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon just going, I'm the head of the party. This is what I believe in. This is what I'm going to state. I'm not going to freak out. My head's not going to explode. It hasn't exploded yet.
Yeah.
And people are taking to that. And a lot of the people who voted for the CAQ are now giving their support, at least in terms of polls, to the Parti Québécois. And I think everybody in Quebec had better pay strict attention to what is going on here, because it's not a matter of sovereignty. It's a matter of, I hate to say it, this guy being the least lousy guy out of the whole choice. And that's why Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon is doing so well. Nothing against him. He's done a very, very good job. But it's not remarkable. But compared to everybody else, he's shining. Hence these numbers.
We're also hearing next to nothing about the Conservatives, right? I mean, when we were talking earlier, I think we had one caller who said they will continue to vote Conservative. I feel like people should be taking advantage of this situation, but then I ultimately find myself thinking there's just too many parties. There's too many choices, which seems counterintuitive to say that. But would we benefit from having a couple of fewer parties here?
Now, Natasha, if you had your own kingdom, perhaps you could do that. But I'm sorry, that's the way democracy works. And the fact is, listen, they got votes. The Conservatives got votes in the last elections because of our absolutely rigged system that they didn't get any seats. And as I say, I'm not joking here. Our game is going to go in full bore, trying to lure defectors from the CAQ. And if you don't think they're talking about, you don't think there's a certain level of disgruntlement in the ranks of the Coalition Avenir Québec, especially on all the newbies who thought they were going to be, surfing this wave of popularity and easily into a third term. Well, think again. A lot of people are discovering that they are very slowly but surely becoming the party Quebecers love to hate. And when I say, I'm not kidding, because the Liberals and Quebec Solidaire, it's we don't care. You're just off our radar. Do what you want. We don't care. The CAQ is getting way too much attention, whether it's about party funding, whether it's about the way their leader talks to anybody these days. And the perception that the CAQ, even though they were supposed to change, have changed absolutely nothing other than the amount of money they get paid as MNA.
So let me put you in the shoes of Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon or the PQ then. Here you are riding this, this wave. What do you do next? Nothing? Just sit back and before you say something that kind of puts your foot in your mouth, what do you do?
Listen, it's funny you mentioned that, because he was being interviewed in the wake of the last poll and this wave of popularity. And they said, well, how are things going? He says, you know what? I think we might be able to, in the next election, I think we might be able to get back those 7 seats we lost up in the Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. Nothing more than that, nothing more than some quiet speculation over something that will happen 2 years from now. No bluster, it's clear, Quebecers want to change, the winds have changed, Quebecers want to... No, just a very clear, cautious, normal, and these days, I don't know if he is or not, but I got to tell you, right now, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon sounds like he knows what he's talking about, and that is precisely what Quebecers want to hear.
Okay.
Just that little pesky separatism.
Let me just say again, that interview or part of that podcast, which as I said is 50 minutes long, we can't obviously play. You'll hear some of it covering some pretty good points coming up just after the 5:30 news.
Oh, absolutely. Go there, listen there, go to MontrealGazette.com and get the unedited version.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think maybe tomorrow you've already got your question of the day, thanks to Natasha, which is, are there too many stupid little political parties in Quebec?
I like the stupid part.
Look, I want to move off of this, although it is really the big story, and I imagine will continue to be, especially given that the National Assembly is, going to be basically sitting in, what is it, tomorrow, Jim? Is that when we resume?
Yep, back to school tomorrow.
Going to be interesting to see how this plays out. You wonder, this will give us maybe an idea of how, how thin-skinned, we already know he is, how thin-skinned François Legault is. He's going to get asked about this poll. I'd be very curious to see what he has to say.
Well, I got to tell you one thing. For our listeners, I think what's clear is his when in doubt, break glass and let loose the dogs of Anglophobia, that doesn't work. This idea of going after McGill, going after the English of '96, going after adversaries, opponents, Quebecers aren't buying into his boogeyman theories anymore, and they're listening to the guy who's speaking calmly, saying A, B, and C. You may not agree with it, okay, but he's not turning around, pointing the finger in your face, suggesting that you're less of a Quebecer than he is.
I will point out, by the way, it's about to get a lot hairier for the Premier because Wednesday there's already a planned student strike. There's a demonstration planned about this specific topic. They're going to be out in the streets, and I imagine there'll be a lot of them out in the streets, a la, student strike back in, 12 years ago. And you'd have to think that's not going to be a good look for this government either.
Well, when you take a big stick and you start swatting away at various controversies like they're piñatas, like you're going to win some kind of a prize, don't be surprised if there's blowback. There's always consequences. Yeah. Every government has figured that out. Maybe the CAQ got a bit of a break with the pandemic at first. It's a fundamental rule of politics. And you are going to see the equal and opposite reaction to a lot of the actions that François Legault has been taking over the past 6 months.
It won't be dull, that's for sure. Jim, thank you.
Matt.